Whispers echoed through high society ballrooms when the Duke of Ashbourne arrived in London, allegedly seeking the perfect bride. Everyone knew he came for the glittering diamond of the season. No one anticipated that a forgotten scandal and a hidden sister would completely shatter the city's most prestigious family. London in the spring of 1814 breathed gossip and diplomacy in equal measure. Victory celebrations over the French dominated the city, bringing foreign dignitaries, returning war heroes, and ambitious aristocrats to the glittering halls of Almack's. Amidst the flurry of social maneuvering stood the Fairfax family, an ancient house teetering on the edge of financial ruin. Lord Arthur Fairfax possessed a terrifying mountain of gambling debts and one singular, spectacular asset, his youngest daughter, Arabella. Society demanded perfection, and Arabella delivered it flawlessly. Endowed with porcelain skin, golden ringlets, and a laugh that sounded like silver bells, she had caught the eye of Sarah Villiers, Lady Jersey herself, who pronounced her the undisputed diamond of the season. Her destiny was rigidly planned. She was to secure a duke, replenish the family coffers, and elevate the Fairfax name back to its former glory. Hidden entirely from this brilliant trajectory was Josephine. 3 years Arabella's senior, Josephine was the product of Lord Fairfax's brief, disastrous first marriage to an impoverished French aristocrat who had fled the Revolution. When her mother died, Josephine was quietly absorbed into the shadowy corners of the Fairfax estate. She was not deformed, nor was she entirely plain, but she possessed a sharp, intelligent face, raven dark hair, and an unfortunate tendency to speak her mind. Her stepmother, Lady Beatrice, quickly realized that standing Josephine next to Arabella drew unwanted attention to Josephine's quiet intensity and Arabella's lack thereof. The single father named made a decision of his house. She balanced the household ledgers, wrote Lord Fairfax's correspondence, and, most crucially, penned the witty, elegant letters Arabella sent to her various suitors. Leopold Montgomery, the Duke of Ashbourne, did not believe in romance. As a close confidant of Lord Castlereagh and an instrumental figure in the ongoing political treaties with Tsar Alexander, Leopold viewed marriage as a strategic alliance. He required a duchess who was impeccable, scandal-free, and beautiful enough to serve as an ornament at his diplomatic dinners. Having spent the last 5 years deeply embedded in the gritty realities of war and foreign policy, he had no patience for the superficial games of the London ton. He simply wanted to make his choice, secure the engagement, and return to his estate in Derbyshire. Arabella Fairfax seemed the most logical choice. Their introduction occurred at the Earl of Liverpool's grand reception. Leopold, weary of the cloying perfume of ambitious debutantes, found himself introduced to Arabella. She recited a perfectly rehearsed compliment regarding his recent speech in the House of Lords. She smiled at exactly the right moments. She was, in every measurable way, flawless. However, the reality of the Fairfax household was far more complicated than the polished facade they presented to the Duke. 2 nights after the reception, Leopold arrived at Fairfax House for a private dinner. Heavy rains had flooded the streets of Mayfair, trapping the guests indoors. Escaping the suffocating heat of the drawing-room and Arabella's incessant chatter about ribbons and upcoming regattas, Leopold sought a moment of quiet. He slipped into the dimly lit family library, seeking a quiet corner to review a heavily coded diplomatic missive regarding French troop movements that he had received earlier that day. Distracted by the sudden intrusion of Lord Fairfax, who enthusiastically tracked him down to offer a glass of port, Leopold accidentally left the encrypted document resting on a mahogany reading table. Hours later, long after the carriage lamps had faded into the foggy London night, Josephine crept into the library. Sleep evaded her, as it often did when the house was full of wealthy men evaluating her sister like a prize mare. She carried a single candle, seeking the comfort of her beloved books. Instead, her eyes caught the heavy parchment left on the table. Curiosity overpowered her strict sense of boundaries. Josephine leaned over the document, The coded French was complex, but she had spent her childhood speaking the language with her mother, and her years managing her father's dubious accounts had made her a master of deciphering obfuscated text. Without thinking, she picked up a quill. In elegant, sharp script, she corrected a glaring mistranslation in the margins, noted the proper regional dialect of the French province mentioned, and added a brief, insightful commentary on the political leaning of the author. Morning brought chaos. Leopold returned to Fairfax House just after dawn, his usually composed demeanor fractured by sheer panic. He demanded access to the library, praying the document remained undiscovered. He found it exactly where he had left it, but as he scanned the parchment to ensure it was intact, his eyes locked onto the fresh ink in the margins. The handwriting was graceful, but the intellect behind the words was razor-sharp. Whoever had read his private, highly sensitive document had not only understood the complex geopolitical situation, but had offered a tactical correction that his entire team of analysts had missed. Leopold stared at the ink, a profound sense of intrigue warring with his political caution. He folded the parchment, slipping it into his coat. He had come to Fairfax House to court a beautiful, simple girl. He never expected to find a hidden genius operating in the dark. Courtship, in Leopold's experience, was an exhausting theatrical performance. Over the next 3 weeks, he played his part perfectly. He sent Arabella lavish bouquets of white roses. He escorted her through Hyde Park during the fashionable promenade hour. He danced the mandated 2 waltzes with her at Almack's, cementing society's assumption that an engagement was imminent. Yet an unshakable restlessness plagued him. During every conversation with Arabella, Leopold searched for a glimmer of the brilliant mind that had corrected his diplomatic papers. He subtly introduced complex topics: the unrest in Paris, the economic toll of the blockades, the nuances of French literature. Every attempt was met with a blank, beautiful stare, followed by a sudden change of subject to the latest silk imports from India. "Politics are so terribly dreary, Your Grace," Arabella had sighed during a carriage ride, fluttering her eyelashes. "My sister always says that a woman's mind is much better suited for poetry and the arts." Leopold froze. "Your sister?" "Oh, Josephine," Arabella waved a gloved hand dismissively. "My half-sister. She's terribly plain and entirely too serious. Father keeps her in the country mostly, but she is here managing the servants while Mother is afflicted with her migraines." The puzzle pieces snapped together with violent clarity. The ghost in the library. Determined to test his theory, Leopold orchestrated a dangerous gamble. He drafted a letter to Arabella, purposefully dropping a subtle but complex reference to a philosophical treatise by Rousseau, a text far too scandalous for a proper debutante to know. He ended the letter by asking for her thoughts on the matter, sealing it with the Ashbourne crest. 2 days later, a reply arrived. It was perfumed and written on pink stationery, but the handwriting elegant, sharp, unmistakably the same script from the margins of his diplomatic missive betrayed the author. The response was a masterclass in intellectual sparring, dismantling his philosophical argument with brutal, articulate precision while maintaining a veneer of polite modesty. Leopold sat in his study for an hour, reading the letter until the words blurred. He was officially courting the wrong woman. Infiltrating the inner workings of Fairfax House became his new, obsessive mission. He began arriving for visits earlier than scheduled, bypassing the formal drawing rooms. His persistence paid off on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Bypassing the butler, Leopold walked quietly toward the conservatory at the back of the house. There, surrounded by overgrown ferns and the sound of drumming rain on glass, he found her. Josephine was seated on a stone bench, her fingers stained with ink, furiously writing in a leather-bound ledger. She wore a simple, unadorned, dark blue day dress that contrasted sharply with her pale skin. Her dark hair was hastily pinned up, several loose strands framing a face that held more character and fierce intelligence than any woman Leopold had ever met. So, Leopold's deep voice shattered the silence of the conservatory. You are the ghost who corrects my French, Josephine gasped, dropping her quill. She shot to her feet, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and defiance. Your Grace, you should not be in here. Arabella is waiting for you in the yellow sitting room. Leopold stepped forward, closing the distance between them. He pulled the pink perfumed letter from his breast pocket and held it up. Arabella did not write this, nor did she correct my diplomatic dispatches. You did. Josephine's jaw tightened. I do not know what you speak of, Your Grace. I am merely the family's bookkeeper. Do not insult my intelligence, Lady Josephine, and I shall not insult yours, Leopold said, his tone softening but remaining firm. Why are you hiding in the shadows, writing your sister's letters? Why allow her to claim your intellect as her own? A bitter laugh escaped Josephine's lips. She looked away, staring into the dark greenery. Because my intellect has no value on the marriage mart, Your Grace. Arabella is the investment. I am simply the labor ensuring the investment yields a high return. A duke, specifically. She turned back to him, her dark eyes flashing with guarded vulnerability. If you expose me, my father will ruin me. Please leave it be. Marry Arabella. She will look beautiful at the end of your dining table. Leopold stepped closer, close enough to smell the sharp scent of ink and the faint lavender of her soap. I do not want a painting at the end of my table, Josephine. I want a partner. Before Josephine could process the gravity of his words, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, followed by the distinct sound of a man shouting in harsh, drunken tones. Josephine's face drained of color. Lennox, she whispered, a sound of absolute dread. Without thinking of propriety, she bolted past Leopold, sprinting toward the servants' corridor. Leopold, fueled by instinct, followed her. They reached a secluded alcove near the kitchen stairs just in time to witness Arabella, trembling and tearful, backed against the wall by Charles Lennox, a notorious, violent gambler with a reputation for ruining young debutantes. You owe me, you little tease, Lennox hissed, gripping Arabella's delicate wrist. £50 by tomorrow, or I take those letters you wrote me and show them to your precious duke. I don't have it, Arabella sobbed. Josephine controls the accounts, and she won't give it to me. Please, Charles. Leopold felt a cold fury settle in his chest. The perfect, pristine diamond of the season was secretly carrying on an affair with a ruthless extorter, while her discarded sister tried to manage the fallout. Josephine stepped out of the shadows, her voice ringing like a cracked whip. Release her at once, Mr. Lennox. Lennox sneered, turning his drunken gaze toward Josephine. Ah, the ugly sister. Have you come to pay her debts, then? He lunged toward Josephine, raising a hand. He never made contact. Leopold materialized from the darkness, his hand shooting out to catch Lennox by the throat. The Duke's eyes were devoid of mercy as he shoved the larger man violently against the stone wall. If you ever speak to her, look at her, or breathe in her direction again, Leopold said, his voice a deadly, quiet rasp, I will ensure you spend the rest of your miserable life in a cell at Newgate. Do you understand me? Lennox, choking and terrified by the sudden appearance of one of the most powerful men in England, nodded frantically. Leopold threw him toward the servants' door. Get out! Silence fell over the alcove, save for Arabella's hysterical weeping. She looked up at Leopold, her face twisted in horror, realizing her perfect facade was destroyed forever. Leopold did not look at Arabella. He turned entirely toward Josephine, who stood trembling, not from fear, but from the massive weight of the secret finally breaking open. He reached out, gently taking her ink-stained hand in his. No more shadows, Leopold murmured, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. It is time we had a conversation with your father. Lord Arthur Fairfax possessed a cowardly heart disguised by aristocratic bluster, and when the Duke of Ashbourne kicked open the doors to the family study, that bluster evaporated entirely. Leopold did not ask for permission to enter the inner sanctum of Fairfax House. He strode past the sputtering butler, pulling a deeply shaken Josephine along with him. Arabella trailed behind them, her face buried in a lace handkerchief, her sobs echoing through the quiet halls. Lord Fairfax, who had been enjoying a glass of fine brandy by the fireplace, stood up so abruptly that his drink splashed across the Persian rug. "Your Grace, what is the meaning of this intrusion?" Lord Fairfax demanded, his pale eyes darting between the furious Duke, his weeping golden child, and the illegitimate daughter he preferred to keep out of sight. Leopold released Josephine's hand only to retrieve the perfumed letter from his coat. He slammed it down onto Lord Fairfax's mahogany desk with a force that rattled the inkwells. "The meaning, Fairfax, is that your masquerade has reached its absolute limit." Leopold's voice was dangerously quiet, vibrating with a lethal sort of calm. "I came to this house seeking a wife of impeccable standing. Instead, I find the household built on deceit, an extortionist threatening your youngest daughter in the servants' corridors, and a brilliant woman forced into the shadows to serve as your puppet." Lord Fairfax paled, his gaze snapping to Arabella. "Extortion. Arabella, what has he done?" "It was Charles Lennox's father," Arabella wailed, collapsing onto a velvet settee. "He lost heavily at cards and threatened to expose the letters I wrote him last season if I did not pay him £50. I was only trying to protect the family name." "You fool," Lord Fairfax hissed, his aristocratic facade crumbling into raw panic. He turned to Leopold, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "Your Grace, I assure you this is a minor indiscretion. Arabella is young, foolish, but she is still the diamond of the season. Once you are married, Lennox would not dare—" "I am not marrying Arabella," Leopold interrupted, the finality in his tone striking the room like a physical blow. He turned his gaze toward Josephine, who stood tall and silent near the bookshelves, her dark eyes watching the destruction of her family's carefully laid plans. "I am marrying Josephine." A heavy, suffocating silence descended upon the study. Arabella ceased her crying, staring at the Duke in sheer disbelief. Josephine's breath hitched, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. Lord Fairfax let out a harsh, humorless laugh. "Josephine? You cannot be serious. She is a bastard, Your Grace. A glorified servant with no dowry, no standing, and no future in polite society. Furthermore, she is entirely unavailable." Leopold's eyes narrowed. "Unavailable?" Josephine stepped forward, confusion masking her features. "Father, what do you mean? I have no suitors." Lord Fairfax refused to look at his eldest daughter, instead unlocking a heavy iron drawer at the base of his desk. He pulled out a thick parchment sealed with black wax. "You think you know every ledger in this house, Josephine. You know the butcher's bills and the milliner's accounts. You do not know the debts of honor." He tossed the document onto the desk. "I owe £40,000 to Baron Clement Wallace." Leopold recognized the name instantly. Baron Wallace was a ruthless, aging aristocrat who operated in the darkest corners of London's gambling hells. He was a man known for ruining families and collecting unsavory collateral. "I could not pay the sum," Lord Fairfax admitted, his voice dripping with shame. "Wallace demanded collateral. He knows of Josephine. He knows she manages my estates and possesses a sharp mind. He agreed to forgive the debt entirely if I signed her over to him as his wife. The contract is ironclad, recognized by the courts. She is to be wed to him at the end of the season, quietly, while Arabella secures our public salvation. You cannot marry her, Ashbourne. She belongs to Wallace." Josephine swayed, leaning against the edge of the desk for support. The man her father had sold her to was thrice her age, a cruel and vicious individual who had allegedly driven his first two wives to early graves. All her years of loyal servitude, her late nights deciphering ledgers to save her father from ruin, had been rewarded with a death sentence. Leopold stared at the contract, his mind shifting rapidly from the emotional shock of the betrayal to the cold, calculating realm of political strategy. He was a diplomat who negotiated with empires. He would not be defeated by a degenerate baron and a pathetic father. "Nothing is ironclad, Fairfax," Leopold stated softly. He picked up the contract, his eyes scanning the legal clauses. "A debt can be bought, a contract can be nullified. Not by Wallace," Fairfax scoffed nervously. "He wants her. He views her as a prize. He will not sell the debt. Every man has a price," Leopold replied, folding the contract and slipping it into his coat alongside Josephine's letter. He walked over to Josephine, cupping her pale face in his gloved hand. He ignored the gasps from Arabella and her father. "Do not pack your bags. Do not leave this house. I will return for you." For the next 48 hours, Leopold Montgomery turned London's financial district upside down. He bypassed the traditional solicitors and went straight to the most powerful financial architect in the city, Maiden Mayor Rothschild. Sitting in the dimly lit, smoke-filled office near the Royal Exchange, Leopold laid out his strategy. He did not ask for a loan. He offered a trade. Leopold possessed highly sensitive knowledge regarding the impending trade tariffs with Russia, information that would guarantee Rothschild an exorbitant profit in the shipping markets. In exchange, he required Rothschild to aggressively purchase every single outstanding promissory note, debt, and mortgage belonging to Baron Clement Wallace, effectively cornering the Baron's entire financial existence. Rothschild, a man who appreciated swift, ruthless efficiency, agreed immediately. By Thursday morning, Baron Wallace was summoned to Ashbourne House. When the Baron arrived, expecting a civilized meeting between peers, he was met instead with a stack of documents detailing his absolute financial ruin. Leopold sat behind his desk, steepling his fingers. "You owe Mr. Rothschild £75,000, Wallace," Leopold informed him coldly. "A debt which he has graciously transferred to me. I am calling it in, today." Wallace turned a sickly shade of grey. "I do not have those funds liquid, Your Grace. You would bankrupt me. You would take my estates." "I will take everything," Leopold agreed smoothly. "Unless you sign a document nullifying your marital contract with Lady Josephine Fairfax, releasing her father's debt to you, and swearing to never set foot in London again. Choose." The decision took less than 3 minutes. Wallace signed the release, his hand shaking with rage and terror before fleeing Ashbourne House. Leopold looked down at the freshly signed document, a rare smile touching his lips. The ghost was finally free. Invitations to the Prince Regent's Gala at Carlton House were the most coveted pieces of cardstock in the British Empire. The opulent palace, with its gilded ceilings, massive crystal chandeliers, and walls lined with crimson silk, was designed to intimidate and dazzle. It was here, surrounded by foreign royalty, cabinet ministers, and the most elite members of the ton, that a single father that would unravel his engagement to Arabella Fairfax. Lord Fairfax arrived early, his nerves entirely frayed. He had not heard from the Duke since the confrontation in the study. Arabella walked beside him, surprisingly subdued. The terrifying encounter with Charles Lennox had shattered her illusions of invincibility. For the first time in her life, she realized that her beauty could not protect her from the cruel realities of the world. Josephine had been forced to attend as well, relegated to walking 3 paces behind them, dressed in her usual somber, unassuming grey silk. As the orchestra struck up a vibrant quadrille, whispers swept through the grand ballroom like a sudden gust of wind. The sea of brightly colored gowns and tailored coats parted, making way for the arrival of the Duke of Ashbourne. Leopold looked utterly devastating in formal evening attire, a stark black coat adorned only with the silver star of his diplomatic order. He did not scan the room. He did not look toward the glittering debutantes who batted their eyelashes in his direction. His gaze locked instantly onto the small, grey-clad figure hiding in the shadows of a massive marble pillar. Lord Fairfax pushed Arabella forward, his icing a desperate smile. "Your Grace, we have been awaiting your arrival." Leopold bypassed Lord Fairfax entirely. He stepped around Arabella, stopping directly in front of Josephine. The entire ballroom held its collective breath. The reigning diamond of the season had just been publicly ignored. Josephine looked up, her dark eyes wide with apprehension. "Your Grace, you are causing a scene." "I am starting a revolution," Leopold corrected quietly. He reached into his coat and produced the sealed contract, heavily stamped with the royal magistrate's seal. He pressed it into her hands. "Baron Wallace has been permanently removed from polite society. Your father's debt is settled. You are bound to no one, Josephine." Tears, hot and sudden, pricked Josephine's eyes as she looked down at the documents that represented her freedom. She had spent her entire life believing she was nothing more than an ugly secret, a tool to be used and discarded. Yet here stood one of the most powerful men in England, dismantling her prison, brick by brick. "Why?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Because a mind as brilliant as yours should never be confined to the dark," Leopold answered, his voice carrying just enough for the surrounding gossips to hear. "And because I find I have absolutely no desire to spend the rest of my life engaging in tedious conversations. I require a duchess who can correct my French and dismantle my philosophical arguments." He extended his white-gloved hand toward her. "Dance with me, Josephine." A collective gasp echoed from the observing dowagers. The Duke was asking a penniless, illegitimate half-sister for the first waltzer declaration as binding as a ring. Josephine hesitated, acutely aware of the hundreds of eyes bearing down upon her. She looked past Leopold toward Arabella. She expected to see hatred and jealousy on her younger sister's face. Instead, Arabella offered a small, genuinely remorseful smile and gave a tiny, encouraging nod. The golden cage had been terrible for Arabella too, in its own way. Taking a deep breath, shedding the weight of the ghost she had been forced to play, Josephine placed her hand in Leopold's. He led her to the center of the dance floor. As the sweeping notes of the waltz began, he pulled her into his arms. The gray silk of her dress seemed to catch the light of the 1,000 candles overhead, transforming her not into a glittering diamond, but into something far more rare and substantial. "They are staring," Josephine murmured. Her cheeks flushed as they spun across the polished floor. "Let them stare," Leopold replied, his hand resting firmly on her waist, drawing her slightly closer than propriety dictated. "They are looking at the new Duchess of Ashbourne, and I intend to ensure they never overlook you again." In the weeks that followed, the scandal rocked London to its core, but Leopold's vast influence shielded them from the fallout. They were married in a quiet, fiercely private ceremony in Derbyshire. Josephine did not just become a duchess, she became Leopold's greatest political asset, quietly co-authoring treaties and managing his vast estates with terrifying efficiency. The shadows that had once hidden her became the very foundation of her power, proving to all of high society that true brilliance could never be permanently eclipsed. Did this tale of hidden brilliance and scandalous society secrets capture your heart? The glittering world of high society is full of shocking betrayals, unexpected romance, and heroines who step out of the shadows to claim their rightful place. If you loved Josephine and Leopold's story, please hit that like button, share this video with your fellow historical drama lovers, and subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable historical romances.